I was standing there in my board shorts, dripping wet, arms crossed, watching two police officers stare at me like I was the criminal they had been hunting for years. Behind them, Karen Yep. The Karen was waving her arms in the air, her oversized pink sun hat bobbing up and down like it was some sort of crown. She was screaming, pointing at me like I'd just committed the biggest crime in the world. "That's him. That's the trespasser," she screeched, her voice carrying across the pool, louder than the sound of the water splashing around. "He's been using our community pool without permission. I want him arrested immediately." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Me? A criminal? In my own town? This was ridiculous. I wasn't even part of their HOA. I didn't live in their fancy little subdivision. I lived on a small piece of land my dad left me, a ranch right next to their little neighborhood. I wasn't even close to their little gated world. The officer, a big guy with a serious face, turned to me. "Sir, we received a report that you've been trespassing on private HOA property. Can we see your ID?" I wasn't worried, I was just confused. "Sure," I said, handing over my driver's license. "But you're about to feel real silly when you realize what's going on." Behind me, Karen stood like she had already won, her arms crossed, and her smug smile plastered on her face. Her Tory seemed certain. The officer took my ID, looked at it carefully, then looked back at me. He turned to his partner, mumbled something, and the next thing I knew, they were walking back to their squad car. Karen stood there, throwing dirty looks my way, while the parents and kids by the pool whispered and stared. It was getting hot. The concrete under my bare feet was burning, and I had a terrible feeling this wasn't going to end with a simple apology. Just as I was about to wonder how much worse this could get, I saw another man, an older guy in a red polo shirt, storming toward us with a stack of papers in his hand. His face was red with rage. "We warned you," he yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You've been using our pool without paying dues. You're a thief, a freeloader, and we're taking legal action." I opened my mouth to speak, but he shoved a letter into my chest. The bold words "cease and desist" screamed at me from the page. I looked back at the officer. This was way worse than I thought. "Let me take you back a few weeks. It all started on one of those brutal, sticky July days in Texas, when the air felt thick enough to swim in. I had just finished fixing a fence along the back edge of my property. Sweat was dripping down my face as I trudged back toward the house when I heard it. Laughter. Splashing. The sound of kids having a good time. I wiped the sweat from my brow and looked through the trees to the new HOA community pool next door. It was glistening, sparkling blue water. Kids were running around, splashing each other. Parents were lounging with lemonade in hand. I smiled. Good for them. Everybody deserves a little fun in the summer, right? But then I remembered. My dad's old ranch had a pond on it. Not as fancy as a pool, sure, but it was enough for me growing up. But after he passed, the pond had fallen into disrepair. Weeds everywhere, water levels dropping. I had dreams of fixing it one day, but money was tight, and there were always more important things to fix. So, when I got home that afternoon, I found a flyer stuffed in my mailbox. It was for the HOA's pool grand opening, with a big picture of the sparkling blue water. No mention of IDs, no mention of needing to be an HOA member. It said, "Residents welcome." Well, I wasn't a resident, technically, but I figured it was probably a casual, open invitation. Small-town hospitality, right? The next afternoon, I grabbed a towel, tossed it over my shoulder, and walked over. The pool gates were wide open, kids were running around, and nobody even gave me a second glance. I swam for about 30 minutes, just enjoying the cool water, feeling like a normal person, not a sweaty ranch hand. It wasn't until my third sit that I noticed her. Karen. She was lounging by the pool, iced coffee in hand, clipboard in the other. The second I walked through the gate, she locked eyes with me. You know that feeling when someone's watching you too closely? Yeah, that was her. I gave her a polite smile, but she didn't return it. Instead, she narrowed her eyes and whispered something to another woman. I shrugged it off. Maybe she was just one of those people who didn't like newcomers. No big deal. A few minutes later, though, I saw her snapping a photo of me. That was when I knew I was probably in for some trouble. Sure enough, the next day, I found a note taped to my mailbox. Unauthorized use of HOA property will not be tolerated. This is your final warning. I was furious. I wasn't part of their HOA. My ranch wasn't even in their development. I had been there long before they ever built their fancy houses. But I decided to keep my head down, stay away for a bit. Maybe it would blow over. But Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, I was fixing a barn door when I saw her again. She was standing at the property line with 2 other women, papers in hand, talking animatedly. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew they were up to something. I sat on the porch that night, sipping a cold drink, thinking something was about to go down. And sure enough, it did. The next day, I walked back to the pool. The heat was unbearable, and I figured maybe Karen had calmed down. Maybe I could just swim a little and let things slide. I should have known better. As soon as I stepped into the water, I heard it. That unmistakable shrill voice. There he is. That's the man trespassing on our property. I'm calling the police. At first, I thought she was bluffing. But nope, she meant business. Within minutes, the police showed up, sirens off, but lights flashing. And just like that, I found myself standing there, wet, like a criminal caught red-handed. I won't bore you with the details of the police conversation. Karen and the HOA board were making it sound like I had committed some heinous crime. They handed me a cease and desist letter, and then the officer realized something I hadn't expected. Sir, according to these records, you don't even live in their HOA. Karen's smile froze. That's when the real mess began. You see, they couldn't let it go. The HOA president, Rick, was furious. He wanted to take it to civil court, suing me for using their facilities without paying dues. Due law $5,000 in damages. It was outrageous. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Mr. Whitmore, a lawyer I knew and trusted, told me they had no case. They couldn't just claim I was part of their HOA, especially when I wasn't. But they were relentless, and they kept pushing. The fight dragged on. It wasn't just about the pool anymore. They were trying to annex my land. I had to fight back. My dad had taught me that you don't just roll over when people are trying to take what's yours. Then it escalated even further. One night, someone planted a firebomb on my ranch. I stopped it before it could do serious damage, but it was clear. This wasn't about property anymore. It was personal. Fast forward, and the HOA was in full meltdown mode. News outlets got involved. People started supporting me. The authorities began investigating. Eventually, the entire HOA board resigned in disgrace. Karen was slapped with charges, and Rick lost his real estate license. As for me, I rebuilt what they had tried to destroy. And every inch of land that had been my family's for generations, that I worked for, I fought for, stood tall. That day, after everything went down, I sat on the porch with Duke, my dog, thinking about everything that had happened. People had tried to take my land, to destroy my home. But I had the truth on my side. And the truth, just like the land under my boots, is something no HOA could ever take away. So what do you think? Have you ever had to fight for your property against people who thought they could push you around? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences. Let's talk about what's right, what's wrong, and how we can stand up for ourselves when it counts.